From your perspective, people on your board, people who read your stuff, true Notre Dame fans, where are they at in terms of expectation of this team now? Have they shifted in your point of view?
I think they have, and it's a little bit scary because Notre Dame fans, as passionate as they are, they could be a little pessimistic at times too, or just real. They can be realists because a lot of the national narrative, yeah, the true fans, the guys that are there every single Saturday, they feel it too. They knew that Notre Dame hadn't won a big bowl game, a major bowl game, however you want to define it, since 1993. Like it had been 3 decades. But then you do it against Georgia, as Andy mentioned, in the Sugar Bowl. You do it against Penn State in the Orange Bowl. And all of a sudden, I think these fans are truly believing that Marcus Freeman and this Fighting Irish team can do it every single year. And the beauty of the playoff is like more of those games matter now. So winning a Sugar Bowl in a quarterfinal, like that meant something and it mattered. But winning a Sugar Bowl in a 4-team playoff year when it wasn't a part of the playoff, like I think people, sometimes you can forget about those types of wins. But Notre Dame fans have not forgotten about that Sugar Bowl. They have not forgotten about that Orange Bowl. And yeah, to answer your question, Ari, I think it's a run it back type of attitude that these fans are taking into 2025. They feel like the Irish can be there again. And quite honestly, they won it all this time. Because as we mentioned, as great of a season as it was, they didn't win the whole thing. And now I think these Irish fans truly believe that that's the next step, and it's actually an attainable one.
I mean, I think they're probably pessimistic to a certain extent because they went 20 years or whatever it was without winning a major bowl game. So, seeing it with your own eyes, I think is proof that it can be done. Because I think if a Notre Dame fan was being honest with itself, I'll be honest with myself, I would wonder if Notre Dame's limitations as a university in terms of their admissions and their culture made it impossible for them to compete at the highest level. And it looks like the sport, they've gotten better, no question, but the sport has also become more manageable too. And the hope for Notre Dame is the next time they get into that position, which could be as soon as this year, they don't have to play an Ohio State team. That's, I don't know that team's going to exist anymore.
Notre Dame has always been in that unique position where it knows it can be good every single year. Like you're still going to get good enough recruits just on brand name alone and who you've been for 100 years. But like you said, in the last couple of decades, there's been some limitations there where the Ohio States are able to keep, like, they're distancing themselves from the field more than a Notre Dame has. Now, Marcus Freeman is maybe leveling the playing field more than ever. Maybe the house settlement could help in that regard too. With who knows what that looks like, but NIL might not be what it was in 2021 or 2022, where in those seasons, Notre Dame still had a thing where it's like, okay, we can't outbid these boosters for some of these players that SEC schools and Big Ten schools are getting. Now, like the recruiting, I think we all know with Marcus Freeman is top notch. And whatever happens in terms of the way this landscape shakes out, and part of that is the playoff, right? Like, and that's been beneficial to Notre Dame, and it's helped that Notre Dame has had athletic directors in the rooms making these decisions that Notre Dame has said, hey, yeah, we like the way that this is written up. It actually helps us out, so we're going to go with it. Pretty much every single time that anything has come out with the playoff, Notre Dame's been completely fine with it. And we just saw Notre Dame run in a playoff where they get all the way to the very last game. So with all these things kind of shaking in Notre Dame's favor, and with that guy, Marcus Freeman, leading the way, I think you can shift from maybe more of a pessimistic to an optimistic view. Like maybe Notre Dame is finally turning a corner that in 2005, it definitely was not. And maybe even 2015, in the middle of the Brian Kelly era, it still was not, because you still felt like Notre Dame was lagging behind a little bit.
Biggest question mark going into the offseason was quarterback. Now, we know one thing. It is not going to be a one-year rental. After Sam Hartman and Riley Leonard the past 2 years, it's going to be somebody who's been on Notre Dame's roster. So we're all assuming CJ Carr nationally. Are we wrong there, or does Kenny Minchey have a shot at this thing?
There's more nuance to it than we thought, obviously, because a lot of us didn't think that Kenny Minchey would be here right now. Quite frankly, I don't even know if I did, and I was one of the higher guys on the beat on Kenny Minchey. Like, I saw his game, and I said, that could work. That could work at Notre Dame, and that could work somewhere else. The fact that he's still here, I think, says a lot about him, and you need to kind of quell those worries like, hey, is he just the complete outcast in this? I don't want to say Steve Angeli was, but obviously Steve Angeli was not the answer either. But I say all that, and I still go back to CJ Carr, and I say it just feels like the right time to start a sophomore who just sat through a 16-game season. He saw what that looked like from Riley Leonard in terms of being the starter from the start to finish. Has he started a game in his college career? No. But at some point, you have to start that first one, right? And yeah, maybe it would be a little bit nicer if it was against some directional school at home, Notre Dame Stadium, South Bend, easy victory. But we've seen Notre Dame lose those games too. And like the same Riley Leonard who went down to Texas A&M, College Station in that rowdy environment last year is the one that lost the very next week. So against Northern Illinois at home, anything can happen. Anything can happen with CJ Carr as well. I don't think you have to protect him in any sort of way just because he's a true sophomore, redshirt freshman. I think you throw him out there against Miami and you say, hey, this is our guy, not just right now, but probably in the future as well. And you see what you got. And if you don't got something that you like in a couple of quarters or that entire game, maybe you do start Kenny Minchey at some point. But either way, I think Notre Dame, like you said, Andy, is in a spot where you've got a homegrown guy in either one of them. And, you know, that's a pretty cool thing for Notre Dame because 3 of the last 4 years, you haven't had that. You've gone to the transfer portal. Now they're going to start one of their own.
Sometimes I wonder if having a homegrown quarterback is a sign of program growth. And sometimes I wonder if I'm just full of crap. Like, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, if you nail a 1-year rental from the transfer portal, that's a sign of good program growth. And
Ohio State last year.
Ohio State last year. I was literally just about to say it. Everyone was like, "Oh my gosh, they're going to go with Will Howard." Yeah, who's laughing now? They win the national championship, and quite frankly, Notre Dame's an example of it too. Like Riley Leonard got Notre Dame to the national championship game. Would a true freshman CJ Carr have done that? Would Steve Angeli have done that as a junior? I'm not sure. But to answer your question, Ari, I think a homegrown guy who is clearly the guy, that's a sign of program positivity and a sign of a program that's in a good spot. Because if you miss on CJ Carr, swing and a miss, and you whiff on Kenny Minchey, then all of a sudden you're like, okay, how good are we at this actually? Like, where is our program? Because neither of these guys are going to get us to where we want to go.
Yeah, and I think that's the part. It seemed like the confidence in CJ Carr. Like I go back to when Deuce Knight decommitted and started looking around again. That seemed to be the signal to me that, Notre Dame thinks they know who they have for the next couple of years.
Yeah, and if you read between some of the lines in the interviews that Marcus Freeman has done, there was one, I can't remember if it was a national thing or who he said it to, or maybe even said it to us in a press conference on the beat, but there was a point where CJ Carr was not very far into being on campus and being on this Notre Dame roster, and all of a sudden Marcus Freeman starts saying stuff like, yeah, we got the quarterback of the future on our roster. He could have said that at any point when Steve Angeli was here for 3 years, and Kenny Minchey was here for a whole year longer than CJ Carr as well. But then Marcus Freeman goes, yeah, we got the guy. He didn't say it was CJ Carr, but again, read between the lines. It's pretty easy to tell that as soon as that guy stepped on campus, there was a little bit of a seminal shift, if you will, where you're like, okay, yeah, like Deuce Knight, that sucked. You thought you were going to get a top 5 quarterback in the country, but you still got this guy CJ Carr who's going to be a redshirt freshman. He's probably going to be your starting quarterback and be a really good one.
How much practice do you guys get to watch?
It varies based on the spring or the fall. Like for example, we'll go into this fall and we'll be crossing our fingers and hoping that the schedule says 10 practices because
I remember those days.
Yeah, I think the spring was 6 or something, but in every single big schedule, so like the spring or the fall, we will see one full entire practice, and it's usually pretty late in the game, and that's when we're taking all of our notes and we're really getting a good glimpse of who.
So you got to see that in the spring.
Yep.
Did CJ Carr do anything that made you go like this, like Kevin McAllister?
I don't know if it was that, but in a bad way, like, oh my gosh.
No, in a good way. Like, wow, he has it. You know, I feel like
here's what
the open practices, like when I was a beat writer, like were like stretching. Like we never really got to see for the
we
most
get a lot
part.
of that.
There were times where I remember seeing players do things in practice that made you think, wow, I think that this guy has it. Like I didn't know if you had a moment like that with either.
Actually, I'm glad you kind of filibustered there because it brought me to something.
Good.
The open practice that we had in the spring, the very last throw of the game. So a lot of it was the defense won, and I don't think you guys would be shocked to hear that. Notre Dame's got a really good defense. Whoa, breaking news. But the very last play of the scrimmage, it was a full-on blitz. So Chris Ash is doing his best Al Golden, right, and sending everybody. I want to say it was like jailbreak, 7 or 8 guys, man on the outside. CJ Carr obviously recognized that, diagnosed it, and just threw up you remember that throw that Quinn Ewers had against Alabama in Tuscaloosa? I think it was the 2023 season where he dropped it in a bucket to Xavier Worthy in the back of the end zone. And Matthew McConaughey was standing right there. I think he might have been on the Pat McAfee cast at the time. And he was like, oh my gosh, I'd never seen a ball come down like that. CJ Carr did that to Elijah Burris, who is Plaxico Burris' son. He's a true freshman wide receiver at Notre Dame. And it just fell right into the bucket. And Burris, to his credit, beat his man, but you couldn't have placed the ball any better. And yeah, Ari, I was looking around at people like nobody else threw a ball like that all day. And I'm not sure for the rest of this year, anyone that wears a Notre Dame uniform is going to throw a ball like that if his name isn't CJ Carr. So yeah, he's got a little bit of an it factor there, and we saw it on that play.
Well, let's talk about the guys he throws to. You just mentioned Burris, but Jaden Greathouse definitely during that comeback in the national title game. I think Jaden Greathouse was the one that everybody's like, "Oh, wow, okay, this could be different." And then you've also got Jordan Faison, who double sport guy, lacrosse superstar too. And then Will Pauling, the transfer from Wisconsin, I think is really interesting because I feel like he was Wisconsin's most reliable guy when he was healthy.
Yeah, so Greathouse, we'll start there. Everyone thinks he can be a wide receiver 1, and if you watch the Orange Bowl or the national championship game, you saw a wide receiver 1. Like he was the best wide receiver in a game with Jeremiah Smith. That doesn't happen very often. I'm just talking about like what we saw
that night.
Game. Yeah, and I know Jeremiah Smith ends up winning the game as well, and that's probably the best play of the game. But like Jaden Greathouse was on that level, and we have to remember that this is one of the best Texas high school wide receivers of all time. Like he played his ball right outside of Austin, so the Longhorns would have loved to get this guy. Anybody in the SEC would have loved to get this guy. Notre Dame got him, and I don't want to say he's been a project, but like you look at his statistics in the first couple of seasons, and you're like, is this all he's going to be? It's funny. I'm doing a feature on him for our Blue and Gold preview magazine, and I actually talked to his mom, and his mom told me like she asked her husband, is he just like not good at the college level? Is everything that we saw in high school not what like I thought that was going to translate? It finally did in those last 2 games. 13 catches, 233 yards, 3 touchdowns. Is he going to have that every single 2-week stretch of his junior season? No, but I think he's going to have more games like that, and he didn't have any games like that in his first 2 seasons.
It's an explosiveness and can take the top off the defense or create a huge play out of a small play that I feel like Notre Dame has had a hard time with the last 5 years. No?
Yeah, and Greathouse at his best is going to give you that. Like he literally put a Penn State defender on his fanny just sitting on the field there at Hard Rock Stadium. You don't see that too often between teams of this stature, if you will, Notre Dame and Penn State. So he can give you that. Jordan Faison literally got injured in the first game of the year at Texas A&M, rolled his ankle, was never the same the rest of the year. Like if you looked at him, he was wearing heavy tape on his ankle every single week, even sat out a few games, never got right. We talked to Mike Denbrock for our preview magazine recently as well, one-on-one with Blue and Gold, and he said a healthy Faison is going to be a problem for a lot of defenses. So you've got 2 guys right there who I think they're both true juniors. They're both going to be taking that next step in their career, and I think you're going to see the best of them that you've ever seen. But then the interesting part of that is you got 2 dudes right there, and then you bring in Will Pauling and Malachi Fields. I don't think like Notre Dame's been trying to get this wide receiver transfer thing right for years now. It just hasn't happened. You look at Chris Mitchell last year, Bo Collins, and Collins gave you some things here and there. But if Malachi Fields is the same guy that he was at Virginia, just catching passes over the backs of dudes, like over the helmets, like the best you just got mossed type of stuff that you see every single week. He was doing that at Virginia. If he does that at Notre Dame, that's something that they haven't had. And then Will Pauling is just like the depth that you've never had at the wide receiver position, because he's going to play the same spot as Jaden Greathouse a lot of times. But if you take out Jaden Greathouse and you put in Will Pauling, and he's the same guy that he was at Wisconsin, that's a swap that you never had at Notre Dame. Like, Notre Dame was just relying on its starters, and its starters weren't very good for years and years. Now you have depth at the position. Now you have versatile playmakers from 6'4" Fields to 5'10" Faison. And I think you finally have like a national championship caliber wide receiver unit, which you didn't even have last year playing in the national championship game.
And by the way, we haven't mentioned maybe the best offensive player on the roster, Jeremiah Love. So, who did not have the best national championship game, but was pretty damn good the rest of the time.
Yeah, and he was pretty dang injured in the national championship game. You got to remember that. Got hurt against USC in the regular season finale. Never was the same the rest of the year. Like, I don't know if he had more than 9 carries in any single game in the playoff. And he still scored that fantastic, miraculous touchdown against Penn State, which there's not many guys who can have a 98-yard touchdown in the playoff and that not be their best touchdown of the playoff, because that 2-yarder against
the 2-yarder was way better. I was there for that one.
Like, Abdul Carter just whiffed on this guy. Like, that's when you know you're something special. So yeah, that guy right there is one of the most talented players in college football. And he's not going to get the Heisman buzz because of the reason that I just mentioned. Even when he is healthy, he's not getting 20 carries, 30 carries like an Ashton Ginty did last year. But boy, does he make the most of his carries, and he's electrifying. And I think that actually kind of helps him. Like, Notre Dame is on to something where, hey, let's just give this guy the ball 15 to 20 times in a game, rushes and catches included. And he's probably going to do something really, really cool with those 15 to 20 touches, no matter how they come or when they come. Because like, he jumps over guys too. That's a really cool thing he does too. He doesn't just run away from them or run through them. He literally jumps over them. The hurdle at USC was fantastic. So yeah, that's a centerpiece, and that's a guy that's got to stay healthy, because there's not a whole lot of people like him in college football.